So another season of Hannibal, NBC's Hannibal, has been completed this year. Had some thoughts on season 2 of the show. Probably not going to be too long, too in depth of a video. I've only been through the season once, and it started back in January, February or so. I'd like to go through it again for sure. Um, Mostly just kind of like general thoughts, but I should warn, this review definitely will have spoilers. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, please watch the show. Catch up with the show. Come on. Or if you don't care, just watch and enjoy. Most of the thoughts are going to be, general thoughts, particularly on the season finale, which aired just a few days ago, which I'm still recovering from. Uh, Basically, I mean, first thing I want to kind of get to is that really I'm impressed with just how much ground this season covered. Like in just 13 episodes, they really covered a lot when you kind of think back on it and how the season began and how it ended. Of course, it began with where season 1 ended, with Will Graham in jail, being thought to be the Chesapeake Ripper. And kind of that whole thing. But where it ended up was completely different, and that's kind of the cool thing about, well, not cool thing, but sort of happy accident sort of this show being a bubble show, being always just so close to cancellation. Um, I think they know, like Brian Fuller, the showrunner, all the writers, everyone behind this show knows that because they don't have the Walking Dead kind of numbers or even Game of Thrones kind of numbers, that they can't really pad around each season. They can't really have filler episodes, basically, for lack of a better word. So almost like kind of like a Game of Thrones or like a Breaking Bad. Yeah, you can miss episodes, and certain episodes, kind of like what they did with the first season, which they still did here. Kind of doing like the serial killer of the week, sort of. They had the taxidermist killer from the museum, the guy who works in the prison who was trying to emulate Will Graham's supposed killings, and the crazy bee lady, played by Amanda Plummer in a guest role, which is really cool. She killing people, making like beehives out of them, which is kind of funny when you think about the fact that she's in Pulp Fiction and her name is Honey Bunny in that movie. So Honey Bunny, crazy, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, they kind of that, and like, yeah, you can miss an episode here and there and still get the key points. But it is more so, even more so than the first season. This is a much larger story, playing into a larger story with Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter and their relationship as it kind of intensifies and becomes something a lot less predictable than it was in the first season, I think. Because really, kind of what this season evolved to, because like the thing is, okay, it's this show. You can know Thomas Harris's novels back and forth. Upside down, whatever. You can know every line of every novel he ever wrote on the subject of Hannibal Lecter off by heart, and you're not ready for this show. This show that's one of the pleasures of the show. You can know anything, you can know everything, but it won't prepare you for the show because it is technically mostly new content, though it is a prequel to Red Dragon, and unlike something like Game of Thrones, which is based on a book, or series of books, I should say. There is a story that they are supposed to follow with that show, and yeah, you'll hear fans of the book say, well, they did this different. They had this character here when he should be here, or this was in book 1, but somehow it appears in season 5 of the show, though it's not on season 5 yet. We'll see. But yeah, things like that. There is a story. But here, it's not really a story that they're following. It is a new kind of episode of Hannibal Lecter's past, that we don't really know about. Like, in very, very broad strokes. It is based on Red Dragon, and what we know of Red Dragon is that, okay, so Will Graham, he's retired from working with the FBI. He's very good at profiling serial killers and getting into their mind and things like that. But he doesn't want any part of it until a certain serial killer is giving him no choice but to get back into the game, and he has to have Hannibal Lecter help him. And they have a past there, and he had captured Hannibal Lecter, found him out, and brought him behind bars. So that's what we know about their relationship in broad strokes, in very broad strokes. But this shows how it came to be. And like an idiot, I was thinking, okay, end of season 1 of Hannibal. Yeah, Will figured it out, right? Will figured everything out. So that last episode, season 1, that's going to be the episode where he arrests Hannibal, gets into the big brawl with him, and, captures him, brings him to jail. That's going to be the end of season 1. Nope. But it is kind of, it's cool because it is more than about finding out what Hannibal Lecter is and what he does. And the show, it kind of, it does answer questions that I've had about Will Graham, like even in, 2 movies, well, the book and 2 movies at this point. We know about him that he is really unfortunately talented in getting the mind of a serial killer, but what exactly was it about his encounters with Hannibal Lecter specifically that just hurt him so much, that kind of put such a turmoil on him that he just want to live in kind of his own little bubble with his family for the rest of his life and never have anything to do with any kind of FBI work ever again. So what was it that skewed his psyche and brought him into such turmoil? I mean, in different, incarnations, you could argue, yeah, it's because he almost died, so that was a pretty bad thing. He got, cut up pretty bad, was in the hospital pretty bad. And yes, it was a psychological turmoil, but what exactly was that psychological turmoil that he experienced? Like, in a 2-hour movie like Manhunter or Red Dragon, yeah, they have to kind of just brush by that, but that's the fortunate thing about a television show. It can develop the character significantly, which it does in this show, and particularly this season. So, end of season 1, he figures out what Hannibal is, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. What this season does with Will Graham is show just how deep he can go into the mind of a serial killer, and how very strongly he can empathize, so much that he does technically become one, mentally and spiritually. And it's kind of like Hannibal's seduction of him and bringing him into his world, giving him a rare gift, as he says. And the thing is, I mean, you still wonder after this season if that's, just how good he is at this empathy, or if he, any other case that he's done on this show or in the books, this is my design, whatever. He always seems to have, one foot still back in his normal life, right? So here, this is something that he's never encountered before. He's in so deep that he is like this serial killer, really. I mean, he is encompassed in that mindset and that empathy so hard that he doesn't really know who he is anymore. Like, has he been, seduced so profoundly by Hannibal that, part of him does, want to go away with him and, be the murder family, as they're shipped on Tumblr. Like, he does kind of want that, or you don't really know what he wants. And there's that great scene in the finale where the great music, like the ticking clock, where you see him prepping with Jack Crawford, and then you see him in his therapy session with Hannibal, and like his psyche is skewed, like it shows like half of his face, or half of Jack Crawford's face and half of Hannibal's face, and half of his own face coming in together to make one face that's still really his face, but 2 different faces. It's heavy, but yeah, I thought that was just so well done. How they could really establish that kind of mentality, and they wouldn't have been able to do that in a 2-hour movie, which is why this show is as good as it is, and why I think, for every step that this season has taken, every step has been a step towards that, I think, and it's been done really well, because, with the start of the season, I was getting kind of antsy. I was like, okay, Will's in jail, and that's great, and whatever. But I really want to see him out there again. You know what I mean? So I was always waiting for that. And when you think about it, it's like he's only really in prison or jail for maybe 4 or 5 episodes, I think, before he did get out. But I was getting kind of antsy there, and I think that's what was clever about this season is that they probably knew that people were sort of gonna start feeling that way. So that's why they started the season technically with the end of the season with Hannibal and Jack Crawford in their brawl. So like this happens in so and so amount of time. Get ready for it. Shit's gonna go down. So that kind of eased the transition, I think. And yeah, I think the show really does pick up once Will is out of jail. I think, but again, I think he's in there just long enough that the steps they're getting that a copycat killer to try and kill Hannibal, and Will helpless as Hannibal kind of dangles Lana Bloom in front of his face, and starting the whole relationship with her, and her being in danger but not even knowing it, and all that was really good. And of course the guest spot with Eddie Izzard as the other supposed Chesapeake Ripper. His stuff was really good, so that kind of made everything worth it. And Chilton's been a great character on this show. Is he dead? I don't know. Freddie Lowndes, her death was faked. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, but maybe we find out that Chilton didn't die either, because he's in the books. I mean, we gotta have him. We gotta have him later. But anyway, I mean, kind of the point is that even though it was kind of like a slow start, I think it made everything that happened later in the series, or in the season, all the better, all the more effective. And where it really, kind of differs from a show that gets better ratings, like Walking Dead. Walking Dead could space out a fair amount of story into a few seasons. Walking Dead, I like it. It's a good show, but there are certain episodes where I'm like, okay, this is dragging on really too much, and it took them way too long to get from point A to point B. Hannibal, they go from point A, point B, point C, C, D, E, F, G. They get a lot of legwork done because I think they know that this show could end at any time. And like the end of season 1, I mean, and with the end of season 2, it's kind of like I think they know that if it does get untimely canceled, at least they'll end it in a really devastating kind of way. But more on that in a sec. But anyway, kind of where it really hits its stride is with the Bloom, or not with the Blooms, the Vergers, Mason Verger, Margot Verger. That whole storyline was great. I mean, really, Michael Pitt, bravo. This guy, he chewed the scenery so well as the completely manic and unspeakably rude Mason Verger, who of course we know from Hannibal lore is the only surviving victim of Hannibal Lecter, who was kind of suggested into peeling off his face and feeding it to the dogs, which we see on this show. I don't know how that made it to network television. I think it was the lighting. They kept it kind of in the dark, but oh man. But that was, I was waiting for that, and it did not disappoint. It was a really good arc with Mason Verger, and Michael Pitt's performance was excellent. Really kind of almost like channeling Heath Ledger's Joker a little bit. Like he had similar inflections in the voice, and Papa. He was just great. I thought he was great, and I can't wait to see more of him. Apparently, he is going to be in season 3. There's going to be an arc with him and Margot Verger as well. So, very much look forward to that. But as always, the core cast: Mads Mikkelsen, Hugh Dancy, Lawrence Fishburne. All have done stellar work in this season once more, even more so than I think in season 1, because there is a kind of a heightened what's the word I'm looking for? There's more at stake in this season than there was before. Of course, Jack Crawford. With his wife Bella, there's that whole storyline, and how Hannibal Lecter gets involved with that, and kind of obscenely kind of intervenes in his life. And you kind of think, like, during this whole season, is Jack just a complete idiot? No, but he knows what he's doing this whole season. So that I thought was really impressive. And even with Will Graham, you think, is he really, like, turning into this psycho fucking killer who's killing people? No, he kind of has a plan, but maybe he doesn't. And Hannibal, yeah, he's Hannibal. But what I thought was really cool is that, the show. I mean, it's kind of what I wasn't really sort of expecting when I first came into this show, was that the relationship between Will Graham and Hannibal is kind of like a relationship that he had with Clarice Starling later, which I didn't always kind of, like, from the books, from the movies, I didn't really see it that way. But the thing is, we're seeing it kind of after the fact in those stories. So, it's open for any kind of story, and it is kind of like a this impossible love story where, Hannibal does find a kindred spirit in Will Graham, but this whole season he's not just seducing him into this world, but also testing him, which I think is pretty interesting, very, subtly and sometimes not so subtly, testing him and kind of, batting heads with him, basically. And I do honestly believe that, Hannibal does believe that he, finds a kindred spirit in Will, and Will feels the same way, but he does feel the conflict of, how much is this my special gift of empathizing with killers, or how much of this is what I really want, and, am I ready to go into this world? The answer for Will Graham is ultimately no, but that's how it kind of leads into the final moments of the last episode of the season, which I was not prepared for. Like an idiot again. I thought, this is going to be the episode where Will Graham catches Hannibal, and that's it. No, it ends extremely violently, extremely bloody. Like, I can't believe it made it to network television, this episode. It's also kind of in the dark, it's a dark and rainy night, of course, as it tends to be. But yeah, there's a show off with Jack Crawford. Lana Bloom comes in. She gets pushed out the window by fucking Abigail, who's been alive the whole time, doing God knows what. Maybe helping Hannibal kill. Maybe just kind of, sitting around there in the attic or whatever. But she's back, and Will comes in, and he sees that Abigail's there, and, at this point, of course, Hannibal knows what Will has been planning, and he guts him with the fish knife, of course, and, kind of symbolic, trying to catch the fish, blah, blah, blah. That was the whole thing of this season. But then, oh my god, slits Abigail's throat right in front of him, so you got Alana Bloom outside, pushed out the window, Jack Crawford in the pantry, bleeding to death, trying to get on the phone with his wife. Will Graham desperately trying to see if he can help and put pressure on the wound for Abigail. Hannibal just also heartbroken because nobody really won. I mean, Hannibal was betrayed, and if Hannibal is the main character, then this was from his point of view, the betrayal and what we would expect Hannibal to do, basically, so that he makes off with Dr. Moria, Gillian Anderson twist, which was surprising as well. But Jesus, this, like fucking Hamlet or something, man. There are people dying all, and you don't even know who's going to be alive, who's going to be dead. I honestly don't think Abigail. I don't think she's going to make it. Jack Crawford, maybe, if Chilton can die, then I think Jack Crawford can too. Kind of depends on Lawrence Fishburne, but I hope the character does stay, and I hope Fishburne stays for season 3, because, I mean, really, like, he's pretty much the casual viewer's incentive to view, because this is Lawrence Fishburne. He's Oscar-nominated actor. He's Morpheus. He's, anybody will, flipping the channels, be like, oh, yeah, I like this guy, and stick watching, I think. So he's core to the show, and, of course, a core character, who is also, of course, an important part in the novels, which we don't want to lose him like we lost Chilton. I mean, Chilton, whatever. I mean, let's be honest, whatever. But not Jack Crawford. Jack Crawford, I think, is too important. Lana Bloom, that's kind of a coin toss, I would say. She might be dead, she might not be. Dr. Bloom is in the novels as well, but again, you can't really expect anything on this show. Will Graham, I would assume, is alive. Call me crazy, but then again, you never really know because the show is called Hannibal, not Will Graham and Hannibal. So I really don't know where they're going to go with this show, especially since I'm thinking, yeah, this is the episode where Hannibal is caught. No, so it can go anywhere for the next season, and that's again what I really like about the show. It's so unpredictable, even if you know the whole story, which you don't, because this is a new story. And that episode was just devastating, so bloody and horrifying, and tragic. I mean, for both Hannibal and Will. I mean, it was, their impossible love story, and it didn't have a good ending, which I think sets the stage for the resentment that each would feel for each other later, when the Red Dragon story comes into play, if it does come into play. But man, so much blood and and that's the worst is going to be waiting. I mean, not since Hank was on the toilet in Breaking Bad have I felt so anxious to see what happens next. But next season could go anywhere. I know for sure, Brian Fuller said that the Vergers would play a part. Apparently going to be taking a little bit of Hannibal Rising from Thomas Harris, but switching up a little bit. But yeah, who knows? Anything could happen. This show is great, and I also got to mention it's just such a visually stunning show. The cinematography and the surrealism of this show is just out of this world. Which I think ultimately it takes more of a cue from Ridley Scott's Hannibal than say Silence of the Lambs or Manhunter. Or I won't even say Red Dragon because Brett Ratner, does he have a style? I don't know. But okay, whatever. But you can almost forgive some lack of authenticity in the procedural elements of the show, sort of. So it is a very psychological show, and it's a very surreal show, and a very scarring and just a unique show. Like, you don't see a show like this, and I'm just so glad it's on the air, especially during this whole television revolution where we're getting such great shows based on books and based on other movies like. Again, I'll mention Game of Thrones, but also FX's Fargo has been a great show, kind of really revolutionizing how we see television and how we see adaptations. And what a great time to watch TV, especially with a show like this. So this will have its place ultimately. As the bubble show that it is, it does definitely have a huge fan base on Twitter, on Tumblr, social media, all that stuff. So there are hardcore fans of this show, which I think is why NBC is kind of like, okay, we'll keep this, but any season could be its last, which makes it always all the more tense because what I'm going to be waiting for season 3 is just how horribly it can scar me worse than this season finale did, which is going to be a hard feat. But yeah, imagine if the show was canceled and this was the ending. Oh man. But yeah, I said this wasn't going to be short. Here I am talking for 23 minutes now. That's going to do it. Hannibal Season 2. What a great season. I'm definitely going to be picking this up on Blu-ray when it comes out and watching it all over again. And if you need me, I'll be in a ball crying. So thanks for watching. Comment, rate, subscribe, all that stuff. Watch Hannibal. If you're not watching it, even if you haven't seen it, you've watched this video, and I've spoiled everything, please watch Hannibal. Please keep it on the air. It's a great show. So, yeah.